Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we have the hot location, cloning vats. So anything that you play into the cloning vats lane is going to get cloned and return back to your hand. And so for anyone that's new, hot locations are in effect in 60% of games. So on the day each week that they are in effect, it is absolutely worth building or teching your deck entirely around that location. So today we're going to be covering my top 5 deck recommendations to try while the cloning vat location is featured as a hot location. As we go through the decks, I will point out some of the key cards and some of the different interactions that you can find with those cards. And so starting with the first deck, it's a Pool 1 exclusive deck. It loses some potency later on, but if you're in Pool 1, this one is going to be phenomenal. So this deck operates around the fact that you can play your on reveal cards, your Guardians of the Galaxy, and you can continue to play them and buff them up. So you play Rocket in a lane. He's going to return to your hand as a 1-cost 4-power card. You play him again, 1-cost 6-power. If you hit it one more time, it's a 1-cost 8-power that you can now throw onto the board anywhere. Same thing goes for Star-Lord. He's going to be great at elevating his power over and over and over again. And then finally, we have Wolfsbane. Wolfsbane is pretty unique in that she can be played into that last slot of that location, and then if you play her on that following turn, she's going to be a 3-cost 7-power that has the on reveal plus 2 power for each other card you have here. So if you put it into another full lane, it's a 13-power unit that you're throwing onto the board for 3 cost. The rest of the deck operates under the tempo assumption, so getting as many cards out onto the board as possible. In the cloning vats, we're going to want to focus our on reveal cards, and then on the rest of the board, we're going to want to fill that in some of these other low cost cards that can continue to get buffed up over time. And armor is in this list to protect your cards from an Electra. Electra is very common in Pool 1 as one of the only kill conditions in the game at that point. And so protecting your Rocket Raccoon could be make or break for your lane or for your deck in general. And then we have Enchantress to tech out any kind of Devil Dinos that you run into. We have Gamora just in case we don't hit the good trigger with these cards. You can always play Gamora into Cloning Vats on 5. If it hits, it becomes a 12-power card in hand. And then if it hits again when you play it, that's going to become a 17-power, which is just massive to throw onto the board that early on. And then next we have our Pool 2 exclusive build. This one, similar to Pool 1, once you get into Pool 3, this one starts losing some of its potency, but I think this one is a really, really strong list, especially while you're in Pool 2. So this one varies quite a bit from the original list. Hulkbuster is kind of a spicy decision. So originally I thought a Carnage would be good in here. That way you could flood an Iceman, and then on turn 2 you could do a Carnage, and then your Carnage would return to your hand buffed up. You could do another 1-cost and then another Carnage and just continue to do that throughout the game. But Hulkbuster does just about the same thing, but better. So instead of destroying your board, so if you have a collector on the board and you play Hulkbuster, he's going to merge whatever he merges with. You get a copy of that buffed up version into your hand. So if he merges with the collector, you're going to return that card to your hand as a 5-power 2-cost collector that you can then throw onto the board or duplicate in the cloning vats even further. And then if it's a Sunspot, that's a great way to just skip out the rest of your game and capitalize on that upside. You can throw down a Devil Dino later on. You can throw in an armor to protect it. You also have Wolfsbane as a way to throw it onto the board. And you can drop this maybe once or twice in a lane and then finally cap it out in a second location to give you a win condition in multiple lanes. Or you can always throw Hulkbuster kind of on tempo if you do Angela plus a 1-cost, and then the next turn you do a Hulkbuster. If it merges with Angela, that's fine. You have a buffed up Angela that you can then start flooding all these low-cost cards onto. And if it hits one of your 1-costs, so if it hits an Iceman, you can then continue to drop your Iceman on the board. You could do your Sunspot. You have a lot of upside from the Hulkbuster interaction, whereas Carnage is a little more restrictive. And then if your opponent is trying to be spicy and they decide that they're going to use an armor to protect from any kind of Carnage plays or any kind of destruction triggers, then you have Hulkbuster, and Hulkbuster's interaction will still work in an armored lane. And so it's a little bit more flexible of an option. It does cost 1 additional energy, but the utility that it brings is unmatched. And then the rest of the deck, we go along with the collector. As we're playing into the cloning vats, of course, our hand size is going to stay large. So Devil Dino is always going to be a great turn 5 or turn 6 drop. We have Gamora as a secondary condition. If we drop that as the capstone in the cloning vat location and it triggers, it becomes 12. We can then throw it into another lane. If it hits again, it becomes 17. We have Shang-Chi to take out any kind of large minions that your opponent's running. You have a lot of paths to a win condition with this list. And then starting into pool 3, we have 3 different pool 3 builds that you can choose from, all kind of featuring different cards, different synergies, and I like that there are so many viable options for this location. And so with this list, we're going to focus around Venom, being able to throw in high power cards, clear up the lane with Venom. It becomes a 10, 12, 15 power Venom that then returns to your hand as a 15 power Venom. If you then drop Venom onto Venom, he becomes a 30 power back in your hand, and it just continues to snowball from that point. And so Venom's going to be a big win condition, but this deck also looks at how can you win if you don't have that. And so there are a couple of ways. Every single card in this list is going to synergize with either Carnage or Venom and being destroyed. And then Shang-Chi is a way to swing and destroy one of the opponent's cards if you get outmatched or find your win condition in a secondary lane. And so we have Hood, that can be played into a non-cloning vat location. Then you can start cloning that 1-cost 6-power demon token and eventually eat it with Venom, become really, really large, absolutely smash across the board, and do some incredible things. We have Nova. If Nova gets destroyed by Carnage, or if it gets destroyed by Venom, that can impact all of the other cards in that lane, and it can start snowballing the amount of power that you're absorbing each turn. We have Rocket as a cheap card to throw into the board. If you can trigger his own reveal, you can do this a couple of times and then destroy that lane with Venom, and you're going to have a 1-cost 6-power, 1-cost 8-power Rocket Raccoon still as a resource in your hand, while clearing up the lane with Venom, so then you have a lot of flexibility going into those last couple of turns. We have Angela as a kind of tempo condition. If we do have Venom in hand, we can always drop Angela, flood the lane with some 1-cost cards, and then destroy it with Venom. That is going to allow Angela to buff up to about 6 or 7, and then you're going to destroy that lane. Venom will retain that 7 power, and then we can just rinse and repeat, and it just allows us to snowball incredibly, incredibly well. Bucky Barnes is just great synergy with a Carnage with a Venom. We can throw him onto the board without much worry as long as we know that we're going to destroy him with one of these 2 cards. We are right as rain, because then all of a sudden our power level in that lane elevates drastically. We have Star-Lord as a way to continually trigger that on reveal, similar to our Rocket Raccoon. We have Wolfsbane, which is similar to our Pool 1 and Pool 2. It's a great capstone card, or you can always throw this onto a cloning vat lane. You can then throw it into another lane if that's close to being capped out as well. You can get a 14-power Wolfsbane pretty easily with this location. And then we need an answer to big, strong minions. Our answer is going to be Shang-Chi. Wherever we can fit this in, we're going to try to fit this in today. And then how do we win one of the other lanes? If we have a massive, massive Venom, if we have a 30, 40 power Venom, how do we win the other lane? Well, yes, you do have that 30, 40 power Venom back in your hand, so you could just throw that onto the board along with maybe a Wolfsbane. But another possibility is that you can do a Taskmaster. You can drop a Taskmaster, which will copy the power level of whatever card you just dropped, whether that be your Carnage or your Venom or whatever that might be, to be able to absorb that upside. And then additionally, Arnim Zola is going to be great at destroying that Venom and then pushing it into those other lanes on the board. And so both of those can be a good way to push your massive power from one lane into multiple lanes so you can find that win condition. And so next up, we kind of have the anti-destruction synergy. And so if you're sick of Venoms, if you're seeing that all over the ladder, I think this is going to be your answer. This list has a few ways to make sure that they don't continue to elevate that power level. We have Cosmo as a way to stop those on reveals from happening. So then all of a sudden, all of those destruction cards that they have are now useless. And you can even Cosmo in a secondary lane to really restrict their ability to push power anywhere on the board. We also have Armor as a way to protect the lane. So if we draw into either one of those, we have a good chance to beat a Venom on reveal, a Destruction on reveal. And these cards synergize pretty decently with cloning vats in a Spectrum ongoing list. The biggest condition is getting a lot of low-cost cards into a lane to be buffed up by Spectrum later on. If we throw an Ant-Man into a lane, if we throw a Goose, a Mojo into the cloning vat location, we can then play that into another lane because that's going to copy into our hand. All of a sudden, we have 2 full ongoing lanes with a Wong and a Spectrum coming down on those final 2 turns to push an insane amount of power into those 2 locations. And so we will need to think ahead with the Cosmo play, because Cosmo is going to stop the on reveals. We don't want to push this into a lane where we might end up dropping our Spectrum. We want to play this strategically and figure out if we want to just play 1 Cosmo, if we want to play 2. Or if it's even worth dropping 2, maybe it's just worth dropping 1 and then kind of playing out the rest of our cards onto the board. But this should offer a low enough curve that we can consistently have cards to play, and then as long as we draw into our Iron Man or our Spectrum, we should be able to find a pretty decent win condition in multiple lanes on those final couple of turns. And then if you know me and if you know my content, you know that I'm a big fan of Debrii. I love flooding the opponent's board and just disrupting what they're wanting to do. And so this list is designed to, one, either try to cap out the cloning vat location from the opponent, so we could send them goblins, we could send them stuff with a Viper, that way we continue to push cards into that lane. If they're running a destruction tool, if they're running Venom, then maybe we use Debrii and copy that into the cloning vat location so that we can continue to push rocks into those other lanes, trying to cap them out before they have the chance to duplicate their Venom across the board. And then if we do get outgunned, if we do get outmanned, maybe they're dropping several strong ongoing cards, or something that we just need to make sure that they can't drop an Onslaught onto it on the last turn, or something that they can't drop an Arnhem Zola onto. We can storm that location, which I know I usually don't storm the hot and featured locations, but in this scenario, it might be the most strategic playline that we can offer in this scenario. And so the rest of this deck list operates under the assumption that you want to play your Carnage, so you can do Hood, you can do the Demon token, you get your Sunspot that can duplicate across the board, you disrupt them with the Black Widow, we want to send them some of the junk with our Viper, with our Green Goblin. We have Wolfsbane in there as a way to cap out that location. With this deck, and with sending rocks across the board, with doing things like that, we're often going to find ourselves in a position where a lot of our lanes are flooded with cards. And so if that's the case, we can cap out 1 or 2 of the locations with Wolfsbanes, which if we're doing that on 4 and 5 as our final capstone drops, that could be enough to swing those locations, because that offers the power push that Debrii decks are often missing. And then to cap out the deck, we have Maximus and Spider-Woman. We don't want to drop Maximus until the final turn, and so this is designed to be able to synergize with your Wolfsbane. If on the final turn you cap out one of the locations with Wolfsbane, you drop Maximus in the other, at minimum that is a 14 power push spread across 2 lanes. Or at a maximum, maybe you've already dropped Wolfsbane once and becomes a 12 power, 13 power Wolfsbane and your 7 power Maximus on top of that. That's going to start snowballing and become really hard to deal with really, really quickly. But those are my 5 deck recommendations to try out today. What decks are you running? What combos are you finding are working well? Let me know in the comment section down below if you found something else that works better, or if one of these decks has been doing phenomenally for you. And as always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.